Well, welcome everybody. Hey, let's give it up for our production team. Don't they make it an incredible job? This is literally our living room at home, everybody. So they made it happen. They took my living room and brought it in here. It's literally what it looks like. But I am excited to be here with you today, sweetheart. I'm so pumped. Aren't you excited to have Ruby on platform today? I really am.
I am honored. We have such a beautiful church. I'm so honored.
That's right. Y'all look great. The chairs look awesome. I pray that you're comfy. Here's what we hope you don't do. That's just my hope. Just want to throw that out there. But hey, we want to go into relationships today. But before we do, we've got to give you some context to our lives and let you know that we're not perfect from the get-go.
No.
Okay, we just want to say that right now. We don't have it all figured out. We don't believe that we have it figured out. We're still growing and learning. We still argue.
Never.
We still argue. Y'all, there's still moments. You know how you get into the car at church and y'all are arguing and then you make it here and all of a sudden you smile still? That still happens with us too. It really does, right?
Yeah.
And we get over it in the moment because she's smiling and I'm smiling and you're smiling. Your smiles actually help me in the moments when we get into arguments.
Like, why are we fighting? Why are we even fighting?
Yeah, why are we even fighting?
And then we leave and we remember.
Yeah, and we remember. Yeah, that's right. That's exactly how that goes down. Hey, I want to start with this. We love our parents.
Yes.
We love our parents, babe.
Yes,
You
we
love
do.
your parents.
I love my parents. I love my in-laws and vice versa. He loves my parents. And
I'll give you the $20 after service, just to say all that stuff. No, we really do. We love our parents. We love every single one of them. But we do want to say this. There is such a thing as paradox. Everybody say paradox.
Paradox.
Now, if you don't know what a paradox is, it's this. That means it's both and, right? Like, we want to honor our mother and fathers, and I want you to honor your mother and father. But you need to understand that there was a both and relationship to the honoring that you give to your parents. There was also some things that they taught you that were a little dysfunctional. And you've got to be able to understand what's happening in that moment and accept the both and, the paradox to your parents. That yes, I honor you, but there was also some moments.
And this might not be the case for everybody, but
that's right.
For most that we talked about. So we didn't grow up in Christian homes. We didn't grow up. We get this asked all the time. Okay, you're a pastor, so you must. Are your fathers pastors or your grandfathers pastors? And we can't say that. We don't come from a lineage or a line of pastors. And how many of you know when your normal is dysfunctional, dysfunction becomes your normal? And that was the case for us. That was definitely the case for us.
Now, if it's normal, it doesn't make it right or healthy. It's just normal. Okay, can I say that again? Because some of you are like, normal's okay. No, sometimes our normal is dysfunctional. It doesn't make it right, doesn't make it healthy. It just makes it your normal. Okay, and just because it's your normal doesn't mean it's everybody else's normal. But above all else, it doesn't mean that that's God's design. Okay, normal is not always God's design. God's design can be something very different. So just because it's normal doesn't make it right. So sweetheart, give us some of the things that might not have been normal, that are normal in your home, but doesn't mean it's right.
That's right. So my family consisted of lots of yelling in my household.
Any yellers in the room?
Any yellers?
I love it. I love you. You're so bold and honest. Everybody else like wanting to, and they're like, I don't know.
Yeah, so my house was very yelling all the time. Usually resulted in physical altercation. Not so much with the children until we got older, but mostly from watching our parents. Yeah. My parents go at it. And when I say that, sometimes I think people view my mother being beaten on in the corner. And you gotta understand, my mom had a rough upbringing. So when they would fight, it was like two men going at it. And again, we say this because we love and we honor my parents. But there was a lot of yelling.
The fight or flight, right? That's what happened.
Never any flight, always fight in my house.
The response was constantly fight, never flight. That means you don't run from an altercation. You fight in the altercation. Right. You're going to stay there. You're going to go at it toe to toe. That never happens in our marriage, by the way. If we ever argue, Ruby just quits and, she gives in every way.
No, he's saying that because in the early parts of our marriage, everything was a fight. And
early parts.
All of I know. Oh, you want to get real? We can get real.
Guys, I want you to know, you're going to get my dirt in the middle of it, so I got to get my dirt in the beginning. I got to give it out right here, right now.
No, but it is a constant thing that we have to be intentional about because I know that is what I come from. I didn't come from women and when I say this, some women are going to shut off, so please hold on. I didn't come from a submissive household. I didn't know what it was like for a woman to be submissive to a man, because I came from a lineage of women who were strong, but they also were strong because they carried the weight of the man and they acted, they played both roles.
Come on.
So they didn't let the man be the man.
Come on.
And so when we came in here, I was like, I don't need you to take care of me. I got me. And I didn't know what it was like to be
And then you
submissive.
use that in the fight. You got you, right? You got you. But it would get real. And in my household, we were all A-type personalities. So what do I mean by A-type personality? All of us were leaders. Dad's leader, mom's leader, her own frame. My older brother's a leader. Bobby thinks he's a leader. Yvette's a leader. Like, all of them are leaders, okay? Like my sister, my younger brother. So every time we'd get together, tell them like the camping experience.
Yeah, so
sweetheart.
because they're all A-type personalities, it was always a 10. You know, when I started dating Bobby, said, man, y'all are always at a 10 with each other, which was different for me because it was only when I would see an altercation. But camping for them, because they were A-type personalities, they would all end up taking their own vehicles with their own camping equipment, and they all had to be driving the car. So
because we all had to make the decision at that moment in time. And in my family, we all were very passionate. So what some individuals consider yelling, we consider passion. So we'd be talking, right? Like, no, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. This is how we talk. And then I'd get into other realms and I'd be talking this way. And they said, you're yelling. And no, I'm not yelling. Right? And you really are yelling. But it's really coming from a passionate side, because that's what I grew up in, and I thought that was normal. But your normal doesn't make it God's design. And you need to understand that in relationships, we're all designed very differently. And we need to learn that it's not a give and take as much as it is. If we're going to be in relationship, we need to learn to set the proper boundaries. We need to over communicate what's happening. Many people say give and take. It's not about give and take. It's about over communicating. Hey, this does make me feel. I know men in here, they're like, I don't want to share. You need to. You need to. The reason it's so dysfunctional is because you're not talking about what's happening on the inside of your heart and your mind. But when you start to communicate, it allows us to get to a place where I can see what you see, you can see what I see, and we can continue to move forward. So here's what I want you to know. Relationships are never going away in our church. We will always talk about relationships from this platform.
Yes.
Because God cares about relationships. We care about relationships. Yes. And we all need help in our relationships, okay? So we believe in ACC, we're called to be a church full of people who put God at the center of every relationship.
That's right.
Every relationship. So that means you have a choice in your marriage, you have a choice in your friendships, you have a choice in your family to decide whether God's gonna be at the center. And I believe God has called us as ACC, as a church, to keep him at the center.
That's
but you get the choice. But I want to be a church that continues to choose him every single time. So, sweetheart, what does the Bible say about relationships?
Yes, I want to take you to Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verse 9, and it says this. 2 people are better off than one, for they can help each other succeed. If one person falls, the other can reach out and help.
So good.
But someone who falls alone is in real trouble. Say, look to your neighbor and say, real trouble.
Real trouble.
Not fake trouble. Someone who falls alone is in real trouble.
That's right. So none of us want to find ourselves alone and in real trouble. But what's wild is we find ourselves there so many times. I'll never forget the first time I broke up. It was like in the 3rd grade. Yes, I knew boyfriend, girlfriend in the 3rd grade. All right? So you've got to know, you've got to know that it's real. It's real. Some of you are blinded and think, oh, my kids just so innocent. If they go to public school, trust me, they know a lot more than you think. Okay? Especially in public school. Private school, probably a little bit. Home school, probably a little bit. But everything's different, okay? It's a both and. It's a paradox that I'm giving to you right now. I say this so that none of us do find us alone in real trouble, but we have. Like, have you ever been in marriage and you fight and you feel alone and in real trouble? You're like, who do we go to? Ruby and I, we're pastors. So when we get into real arguments, I feel alone and in real trouble. Unless I've got somebody or community around me that has gone further than I have, and we have pastors in our life, and they have helped tremendously.
Yes.
We no longer find ourselves alone and in real trouble because we have people speaking into our marriage that'll let us know, hey, you are in trouble, but you're not alone. Let us pray with you, talk with you, and we're going to walk you through some of those very scenarios right now. So this means we need to learn what relationships call for. Turn to your neighbor and say, you need to learn.
You need to learn.
You need to learn. We need to learn what they call for. So we are going to go over 2 things. We're going to go over the rotary phone and the smartphone, all right? This is what relationships call for. The first one is this: intentionality over familiarity.
That's
Intentionality over familiarity. Now, every youth in this room right now, under the age of 18, is looking at this thing like, what has he got in his hand? Is that a spatula? Is that some kind of kitchen device? Does it ground beef and it comes out of here? No, that's not what happens, okay? This is a phone, okay? Turn to somebody and say, that's a phone, that's a phone, that's a phone. Anybody over the age of 20 right now is like, hey, that's a phone, man, that's a phone, okay? Probably not even 20, it's gonna be like in the 30s. That's the generation. That's the binding generation. So here's what I want you to know. So here, when you had this phone, yes, it was connected. Yes, it has a landline. You could not take it everywhere. And usually if you had one of these phones, it wasn't in your room. It was in the common space, the common area. It was in the living room or the kitchen, one of the two. Okay, mine was in the kitchen. And you had to be intentional. You had two things next to this phone. You had a notepad. And you had, well, let's three things. Notepad, you had an address book with all the contacts that you knew. Then you had something called the yellow pages. Like you couldn't just be like, I need a mechanic, Google. I need a plumber, Google. You got it a lot better than your parents. Mechanic, oh my gosh, the flood is walking through. Where we go, mechanic? Number one, I don't even know if that looks good. At least there was an ad in it and it looked good, okay?
There was no reviews in there.
No reviews,
stars.
Right? It wasn't like, what does Yelp say about this plumber? Right? So a lot of plumbers that shouldn't have been plumbers were plumbers during that time, okay? But there was intentionality when it came here. You had to write the number down. If you had a contact in your address book, you had the contact because it mattered to you.
That's right.
Tell them about the smartphone, sweetheart.
Yeah, in the smartphone, it's a little bit different because we can get very familiar with our smartphone because it travels in our pocket all the time. So like he's talking about with the rotary phone, if you needed to remember a number, you'd write it on a piece of paper, put it in your pocket, hope that it stayed in there, go home, write it in your address book, to be able to call this individual. Now, how many times have you put a contact in your smartphone and never made contact with somebody?
Come on, someone.
How many of us have contacts in our phone where we have duplicates? I don't even know who this number is.
How many contacts you have, babe?
I have no idea how many contacts.
She's got like 6
My
Brandons.
storage
I'm like,
keeps saying
Brandon?
storage full right now, so I don't know. But we have contacts in our smartphone that we go without making contact with. And a lot of times it's because there's no intentionality. Like if your phone were to die right now or get damaged, how many of you would know some of your closest family members' numbers? Maybe your mom's had their phone number forever, but I can tell you my mom changes her phone almost every couple months. I don't even think I would know it, So this is even a message for me is you have to be intentional because let me tell you something, familiarity suffocates relationships.
Wow, come
on. Familiarity suffocates relationships. When you get too familiar, it's just so-and-so calling. I'm not going to answer it. It's just my mom. It's just that person. I'm not going to answer.
And hang up. And that's real, right? Because you get into a place where familiarity doesn't just go there. Familiarity defeats honor. Intentionality gives honor.
That's right.
Okay? And hear me. The longer you've been friends with somebody, the longer you've been at a job or a workplace, the longer you've been married, intentionality is more work. Intentionality as work is work, period. So the longer you've been together, the more intentional you need to become, which means the more work you need to put into it. But a lot of us, when there's time there, what ends up happening is we are at risk of becoming familiar, and many of us are okay with being familiar.
That's right.
We've been married for a long time. You know me. You know what I meant by that. Oh, it's our anniversary. I meant to get you something.
That's
good. We celebrate this every year, the same time, all the time. Right? So we get into this place where familiarity ends up defeating our relationships. And that's when you wake up all of a sudden asking yourself this question. Do I even want to be married to you anymore?
That's so good.
Do I even want to be here anymore? Do I even want to be your friend? Do I even want to work here anymore? Because nobody's being intentional with you and vice versa.
And that's why I love the military because I've seen soldiers and just people who can be, I guess, in a group of people and do work together, and then they will see that person somewhere later down the line and they still stand up tall. Like there's intentionality on their honor and their respect for those that are above them, those that go before them.
Come on.
And it's culture.
It is.
What you allow inside of your home is definitely culture. If it becomes, you knew the intention of my heart was good, so that should be all that matters, instead of, hey, I'm going to work and fight every single day to make sure that you know that I love you, that I value you, or maybe you're not in a marriage, but a friendship. Hey, I want to make sure you know that I see you, that you don't have to be alone. We've been friends for a long time, but I still see you growing. Hey, I still see you going through something, and that's what intentionality does.
And that wasn't a commonality in our home. So my dad, I didn't see a lot of numbers written down. Even if he had an address book, it wasn't like we talked to a lot of families or friends that he had, and I could go over and say, hey, I know this individual. I want you to know, for some of you, you should get gifts for individuals that you love, okay? Like, hey, treat them. There's moments where birthdays come up. Know their birthdays. Know their kids' birthdays. All that stuff matters. When I've given somebody a birthday gift to their child, it means the world to them. I see their parents' face. How did you even know my kid had a birthday? When somebody's sick, sending somebody a gift, that means the world to somebody, y'all. It's like, you thought about me while I was sick. We lost some of the things in our culture because we got familiar instead of being intentional. And we became lazy instead of working in our relationships. We need to get out of the mode of thinking, well, we don't have to put any work into our relationships. It'll always be there, and we feel entitled to them when, trust me, nobody has to give you anything. They don't have to be your friend. Your mom and dad get to be your parents. They don't have to be, right? It's like, well, they have to be. Listen, there's too many moments we're taking things for granted, and one day when it's gone, we're going to wish we had the opportunity. Honor now instead of feeling like you want to honor later.
That's so good.
Honor now instead of honoring later. So what else do relationships call for, sweetheart?
Yes, so relationships call for focus over distraction. Focus over distraction. And I'm going to go back to the smartphone here for a second, right? How many times have you ever answered your phone, put it on speaker, and maybe muted them? Or some of you don't even mute them. They're like, are you texting? No. When you're answering a text message,
you can hear the click in the background
while you are on the phone with somebody. That is what a lot of us are doing inside of our relationships right now, where we're talking to somebody, we're in the presence of somebody, and we're actually distracted over being focused. So I remember there was a pivotal moment in our relationship where I was talking to Bobby about something that was super important to me. And he was looking at his phone, and he was doing something on his phone that probably was very important. And I said, hey, I'm talking to you. I really want some eye contact right now.
You said important, and I made everything seem important when it was on the phone. Like, it is important. This email is important. This text message is important.
Yes, that's good. So he was doing something. I said, hey, I really want you. Can you put the phone down? I want eye contact right now. I want to talk to you. And his response was, I'm a good multitasker. Just keep talking. Wow.
Now, gentlemen, if you're taking notes right now, you don't do that. You don't do that.
So this is where I tried to be smart and slick. And I said, okay, tell me everything I said in the last 2 minutes. And my husband, quoted word for word everything I said in the last 2 minutes. And so inside, he's jumping for joy. And I said, you know what?
All the linemen had my back. I appreciate you so much. Every single one of you, men.
I said, I understand your gifts and your talents and what you're good at, but that's not what I'm asking for. That's not what this relationship is calling for. It's not the point that you can multitask. What this relationship is calling for right now is eye contact. What this relationship is calling for right now is intentionality. This relationship is calling for you to be focused, not distracted on what I'm trying to tell you.
Wow. Can I put into that, sweetheart? So in that moment, y'all, I knew that I could, but just because I could doesn't mean I should. Does that make sense? Just because I could doesn't mean I should. So in the same way, when we talk about capabilities and abilities and we're saying, hey, there's some things that are permissible, but not everything is beneficial, this is one of those moments. Could I have? Sure. Should I have? No. And I also want you to hear this. And this is going to the men out here right now, okay? And this is every man in here. Whether you're working on a friendship, you've got a friend that you got some guy friends, you got some girlfriends. You need to know that this relates in every area of your life. Every area, this is important, okay? My wife was communicating something to me, but she was coming from the women's perspective. And in my marriage, I was just like one ear coming out the other. Like, yeah, sure, whatever. And I went on doing whatever I wanted to do. Then I had a pastor friend sit me down at the table, and he was talking to me, looked me in the eyes, and he says, Bobby, if your wife is in front of you, you put your phone down and you give her your full focus attention. That is your helper. There is nobody else on the face of the planet that can do what your wife does, and you are connected to her, and she is one with you, so you better pay attention. This man literally sat me down
thank you,
and
Jesus.
told me this. It took a man to sit me down, look me in the eye, and say, hey, stop what you're doing and pay attention to what your wife is telling you right now. And you know what I did? All right, man. All right. Because that's exactly how we are sometimes. Like, she could have said whatever she wanted to in that moment, but sometimes we need men in our lives. Listen to me, Lyman. You need men in your life that can look you in the eye and tell you no, and you know that you're wrong, because sometimes you are. Not all the times are you right. And you can walk away from that conversation saying, man, that guy loves me, without saying you love me. And here's the weird part, and this was the dysfunctional part about my family, is that when I was looking Ruby in the eyes and she wanted eye contact, that was weird for me. It was weird. If in my family you looked at me for more than 5 seconds, I thought you wanted to be married to me, and I don't believe in incest. Especially if it was coming from a man. Bro, you better look away. So when we talked in my family, it wasn't like, it was like this. Yeah, Dad. Yeah, bro. Yeah. And I see it because, again, in my dysfunction, that was the functionality that became normal. So when my wife started, y'all, being up here on platform, looking at my wife this entire time, it used to be very, very difficult for me. And for some of you, it's difficult for you to spend 5 minutes looking at your wife in the eyes. Some
of you in the room haven't done that since you've gotten married. Taking a moment to engage at each other for 5 minutes. It goes or to hold each other. For some of you, maybe it's not eye contact, but in your family, hugs are awkward.
Wow.
In your family, saying I love you is awkward. In your family, saying I'm sorry is awkward, because those aren't the norms. And here's what we're doing. We're bringing all of those dysfunctions and bringing them into the church. Don't hug me. Don't look at me. Don't tell me you love me. You don't even know me.
I was the 1 second hugger. You know, the 1 second, just, all right, we're done, bro. Now, get over here. Like, I'm like 3 minutes. You feel it. I love the awkward ones. I love getting the awkward guys, the ones that I know are the 1 second huggers. Come here. I just give it to you. There's somebody else that I cannot name in this room right now that comes to this church and does it too. And I just love when I see him hugging people, because you can just see the guy like. And I'm like, hey, man, he's not going to come back, man. Like, stop. EQ, emotional intelligence, man, emotional intelligence. But it becomes so real because our dysfunction becomes a part of who we are. But listen, it doesn't need to stay that way. But everybody has to go through the awkward.
That's right.
Turn to your neighbor and say, you need to go through the awkward.
Need to go through the awkward.
You need to go through the awkward. The awkward is important in your life because the awkward gets you out of the place that you're currently in. And everybody has you can call it awkward, you can call it breakthrough, you can call it whatever you want. But at some point, it's going to get weird. So what else do relationships need, sweetheart? Because I want to go into this next one. I think it's so important.
Yes, so relationships need community over crowded loneliness.
Wow, come on.
Let me say that again. Community over crowded loneliness. Community is another word, never going away. We're going to talk about it all the time. And can I tell you, we're talking about things like relationships and community because the world has already gotten its grips on those things and is trying to twist what we know about community and twist what we know about relationships. So we're saying, hey, that was God's design from the very beginning. We're going to make sure that we should be leading the forefront on these topics like relationships, like community.
Can I ask you a question on that community? Can you be in a right community and a wrong community, sweetheart? Like,
yes.
Is there such a thing?
Yes, most definitely.
So can there be toxic relationships and healthy relationships?
Most definitely.
What we've seen when you enter into toxic relationships, many times it's because you're lonely.
Yes.
And you're willing to take affirmation and acceptance from any community. And many times that's how we get into toxic friendships, we get into toxic workplaces, and we get into toxic relationships because we're so lonely that we're willing to go against the values that we have and the belief system that we grew up with. So I need somebody to know, if you're lonely in the room and you do have a belief system, you do have core values, and you're trying to put God in the center, I want you to know that you're not alone, but it's also going to take you coming out of the awkward. It's going to take you coming into a place where you're willing to take risks in other relationships. Christianity and walking down the road with Jesus does not have to be lonely. It's only lonely if you allow it to be.
That's right.
Can I say that again? It's only lonely if you allow it to be. That means if you get up out of your seat today and you walk through those doors and you walk out and get in your car and you don't connect with nobody, that was a choice. When you walk by that life group tent every weekend and you claim that you're alone, that was a choice. Because it's a choice to grab one of those flyers and say, I'm going to get plugged into a community.
That's
it's
right.
a choice to say, God, I'm ready to take my next step in what you're calling me to be. God, it's a choice to give somebody some of my information to fill out a Get Connected card. God, it's a choice to say hi to somebody and actually stay a little bit longer so they can get to know me. It's a choice to give up some information and allow people to come into my sphere and place. But because we've learned in our life the defense mechanisms, because I've learned that. Like in my household, we don't talk about the things that matter. We keep those secret. We put those deep down. Sorry was not a norm. That means if I did wrong to you, you better get over it. Don't talk it out with me. We don't need to hear about your feelings. If you talked about feelings, he's just so connected to his heart. He's the emotional one in our family, right? Hey, it has nothing to do with that. It has everything to do with putting God at the center of it all, because God does talk about forgiveness. God does talk about unity. He talks about protecting it. He talks about coming together and making sure that we're one as we move forward. So communicating about how we feel is important. Turn to your neighbor and say, you need to communicate.
That's right.
You need to communicate. So, sweetheart, would you go into how we can pick a right community? How can we pick a right community?
So there are things you want to look at when you're picking a right community. But before I do that, I want to talk about the smartphone again, because in crowded loneliness, someone can be sitting here thinking, okay, well, that's just the youngins, right? I know what you're talking about. You're talking about social media. You're talking about TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, all the likes, all the shares, and how you can be in a sea of people but still feel lonely. But I want to talk to the middle-aged man or the middle-aged woman. Let me tell you what that looks like for us. That can be you come home, you click your clicker for your driveway to open, you drive in your car, the thing goes down, you go inside and you jump on your computer, you turn on your TV, or you go and you jump on your phone and you're scrolling and you feel like now you're relaxing and connecting, but you did no connecting with your spouse, you did no connecting with your children. That is crowded loneliness.
Come on, somebody.
Because we are living in an age of technology, we have isolated technology that is producing a bunch of lonely people feeling like they are in a community.
Come on, someone. Pick up the phone and call somebody. Invite somebody over to your home. Set the table. Have dinner with somebody. Invite them to lunch.
That's right.
All those things matter.
Yeah, so you can feel, how many of us can sit at a table and really say, hey, I can have lunch alone and be okay. I can have dinner by myself and be okay. I was talking to somebody the other day and they said, oh yeah, that's me, I can do that. And I said, well, let me dive a little bit deeper. Can you do that? Or do you, when you hear me say, I can have lunch alone and be okay, is it lunch and you're eating, but you're really scrolling through your phone?
Wow.
And they were like, yeah. And I said, well, then what if you didn't have your phone? Well, I don't know if I could do that. That is crowded loneliness.
Come on, somebody.
You feel like, oh, I can be by myself, but you're really not by yourself. You're looking at other people's feed. You're actually eating what the algorithm is feeding you, right? So you're looking at that and you're thinking, oh, I'm good. But in a sense, in reality, crowded loneliness kills relationships.
So here's what I want you to know about the rotary phone. When you were in community, in a rotary phone, okay, this was in that common space. So that means there was no such thing as a private conversation. There's no such thing. I remember being in the living room. If you had a boyfriend and girlfriend, you weren't talking about things that you weren't supposed to be talking about. Okay, now I want you to know this, okay? So I'm on this, and I'm having a conversation, and I've got a girlfriend, 3rd grade, right? I'm not like, this is what I'm not doing in this moment, right? I'm like, so what are you wearing? Okay, first of all, I grew up in a Mexican home, okay? I was worried my mom was going to pop out of the wall and come and have a conversation with me and throw the chancla from like halfway across the entire room, y'all. I remember I wasn't even allowed to go into a woman's room. I can remember one time I was with my friends. We all went up into a house, and maybe I'm just an old soul. I don't care. I remember my parents letting me know, you do not go into other people's bedrooms. I remember my friends all went into this one girl's room, and I was like, my mom's going to pull up right now. Pull up right now. I ain't even scared of any of you. My mom's scarier than all of you. And listen, if you got a mom like that on Mother's Day, you better be buying her a big gift, because you better love your mom.
Yeah.
Because she's doing some things to place you in the right communities.
That's right.
That's a red flag to let you know you're in the wrong community. After that, all of us, I didn't talk to those. Me and those guys are not even friends anymore. Why? We didn't see things the same way. You're going to lead me into places that I don't need to go. And I had some friends that led me into some places that I didn't need to go. So I want to show you a real quick clip from one of my favorite movies. Can we look at it real quick? Let's check it out.
Hey, you hurry up and get off the phone. I got to call my girl too, man.
Say it right now.
Don't do this right now.
Hey, man, what is this, Cloud Kingdom?
Shut up, y'all. Just
Nothing happened to the mountain gorilla. We all got to use
Gary, you say it or I'm not hanging up the phone. Say it right now.
I love you, sugar. Hey, you hurry.
I love you, sugar. But here it was real. So here's what I need you to know about that space and place. They were all at camp together. They were in a football program together, all trying to get to the same place.
That's right.
He was in the right community. So it was awkward if he acted out of what the community wanted him to do. So here's what I need you to know. There is a way to be in right community. And here's the first thing. If you're looking to be in right community, you need to have censorship and barriers. There needs to be censorship and barriers. Mom, dad, that means censor and barrier that phone. Like, hey, there are some things that they do not need to watch. There are some things that they don't need to have access to. It's important. Why? Because if you give them too much, they can choke on it. You wouldn't give a baby a steak, would you? You do the same thing, that at the right time, I can give you something. In the same way, there are things in their relationships that they cannot handle. 3rd grade, having a boyfriend or girlfriend, I couldn't handle that. I went through major depression in 4th grade. And I know it sounds crazy and wild, but here's what I want you to know. It's a real thing. And some of your 4th graders, they're walking around, you're wondering why they're going through what they're going through. Hey, ask them if they got a boyfriend or girlfriend. Oh, no, mom, no, mom, no, mom. Some things may be happening in their life, and they're needing you to do what? To be their parents. They're needing you to censor them. They're needing you to give barriers. And for the youth in the room right now, I know you don't like that, okay? And you are not going to like them. But as you become an adult, you're going to be grateful for it later. I know you can't see it now, but every adult sitting in this room right now is going to tell you the exact same thing. And you know why they're going to tell you that? Because they learned the same thing when they were a youth and when they were a teen. It matters. Mom, can I go to the movies? Who's going? Is there a boy there? Yes. You're not going. It's just the real deal. If my son-in-law, okay, I'm not even prophesying that right now. If there is a son-in-law, walks up into my house and he goes straight to my daughter's room, you know what? Not the one, return to sender. Walking up like you got all this access up in here. And here's what I want you to know. If you want to be in this community, you want to be a part of this, you need to understand that there are some rules, some expectations, some censorship, and some barriers that I need. Like, you're going to need to clap and whistle every time the lights turn on. You don't go on a date, clap and whistle. I used to have a friend who would tell me that every single time I went on a date. I could never forget it. Clap and whistle. What does that mean? I want to know where your hands are at. I want to know where your lips are at. In case it went over somebody's head. I see everybody like, oh. Write it down. Share it with somebody. I'm telling you right now.
We're in the right community.
We're in the right community.
How do you know you're in the right community? That there are censorships and barriers. And here's the second one, that there's accountability. And I'm going to give it very plain and simple. The accountability person talks more to you than about you. Okay, somebody who wants accountability for your life and who knows your barriers is the one that's the first one to point out, hey, when you're on the phone with that person, you get off a little bit different. Hey, when you come home from that environment, you're a little more snappy. You're a little bit more different. Hey, the way I watched you talking to your wife the other day and you seemed a little more angry, or I watched you talk to your husband the other day and I've noticed you belittle him constantly. Those people actually genuinely care about you. They genuinely love you. That is the right community. And you need to allow people in your life, instead of being like, well, who are you? Who are you to tell me how I talk to my husband? Well, I love you and I care about you. And I saw the look on your husband's face when you made him feel this big.
Come on.
And that's not, we shun those relationships out. Like, I don't want you to say anything. I don't want you to talk to me.
Because you don't want to change?
That is the right community. That is how you stay away from crowded loneliness and you actually have deep, meaningful, intentional, focused relationships.
That's so good.
And that's what we're shooting for inside this house.
And it's so easy to run because we do come from dysfunctional places and we may have never seen that modeled, meaning, hey, nobody tells us anything about our marriage. Nobody tells us anything about our finances. Nobody ever keeps me accountable for my abilities. Accountability has two words in it, an account of abilities. That's literally what they're doing. And when you have that, that means there is overseers over your life, somebody that cares about you. If you want to do that as parents, then you have to model the same thing that you're wanting your kids to model. How can you tell your kids, hey, do what I'm telling you to do because I know it's best? Okay, well, who tells you what to do and what knows best for you? You don't model that either. So there's got to be this repetitive model where, hey, I go to so-and-so and they help me. And I want you to do the same thing so that when they get into their marriage, they know that they need people in their marriage talking into their marriage and sharing things about other things.
And that's not ammo for anybody in the room to go home and be like, see, Mom, I told you. I'm not going to, that's not ammo. Because you know what? They're all doing the best that they can. That's what we learned with our parents. We honor them today. And we have a relationship with our parents because of our relationship with Jesus.
That's so good.
If it wasn't for our relationship with Jesus, we both probably wouldn't have relationships with any of our family members. So we're intentional about that. And maybe you're in the room, you're saying, hey, I've been struggling. I want to tell you, look what Jesus did when he picked his community.
Well, before that, the last one about choosing a right community, it's they genuinely care about your well-being. Right. You need to know that they genuinely care about your well-being. And it goes right back to, what are they saying about you when you're not around? And what do they say about the person that's with you? If they talk about your spouse and they cause division, that's causing division. That means, hey, my spouse doesn't need to go. You probably need to go. Or I'm having a conversation that you can be a life-giving individual when I do have these conversations with you, so that you're not going into a place where you're causing discord with us. But give them that verse in Luke 6, the way that Jesus chose relationships, sweetheart.
Yeah, so look what Jesus did when he chose the 12. It says in Luke 6, one day soon afterwards, Jesus went up on a mountain to pray, and he prayed to God all night. Someone say all night.
All night.
At daybreak, he called together all of his disciples and chose 12 of them to be his apostles, and here are their names. Have you ever pulled an all-nighter before? What was it for? School, work, maybe you were in the hospital with somebody. You pull an all-nighter when it matters to you. We're allowing too many people in our circle, in our crowd, and we're just saying, you have access to my life. You have access. Jesus went all night and prayed for the 12 people that he was going to be surrounded by.
That's right.
The 12 people that he was going to pour into, add value to to their lives, and who were going to carry on his legacy afterwards. He spent all night and prayed for the individuals that were going to be around him until the day that he died.
That's it.
So we're allowing too much access for people instead of saying, hey, am I intentional about my circle? Am I intentional about who I allow to be a voice inside of my ear? Because it matters.
That's so good. You need a circle first that loves God and moves in that direction, and then add individuals as you continue to reach out to people to let them know who God is. It's important for that to happen in your life. So I want to tell you this. Every relationship in here has the ability to be godly relationships. The friendships that you're in, the coworkers that you have, the business partners that you choose. Those of you that are saying, hey, I do feel called to have a business. Some of us are not focused and we're distracted, so we never become the individual that God wants us to be. We never become the entrepreneur that God wanted you to be. You never become the pastor or leader that he wanted you to be inside the church. There are many things that he has a call on our lives for, but you need to understand this. If your relationships are broken in this room, it's not the end. I just want to encourage you right now. It's not the end. And there is no such thing as a perfect relationship. No such thing. No such thing. Like, I think some of us go into marriage, we go into friendships thinking like, this is going to be, we're never going to be upset at each other. We're never going to go through a hiccup. We're never going to go through a problem. And that's in everything. It's not just when you get married. I think we have that fantasy even in our friendships and when we go to work with our bosses and the relationships that we have with people and coworkers. But it's not that way. And here's what I do want you to know. God is the first relationship that we need to see right.
That's right.
Some of us have a poor vision of who God is, and we see him as somebody that's waiting to smite us and get mad at us and be angry with us for some of the things that we've done. And I'm here to let you know that's not how God sees you at all. God loves you and desires to know you and wants to redeem every part of your life. And he has a hope and a future for you. And if nobody's ever told you that, I'm telling you that right now, that you are looking at God from the wrong lens. And because you see God that way, you see every other relationship the same way.
Come on.
You've got to start to see God from the lens. Hey, you are my son. You are my daughter. I have called you. I do see you. I do love you. I want to forgive you. I want to wrap my arms around you. I want to build you, not tear you down. We see God from this lens that ends up hurting the foundational parts of our relationship. So today in this room, I want to let you know that God loved you so much that he did send his son Jesus to this earth to die for your life, that you and I might have a relationship with him, that he no longer sees you, your trash, your past, the closet that nobody else gets the opportunity to see, the bones that are in the closet, the things that nobody knows about. God says, hey, I'm moving that away. He says this in Romans 8:28, I work all things for the good of those who love me. That means, hey, all things mean the bad things, mean the trash things, means the things that I can't get away from, means the things that are on me. God, hey, I'm done with all those things and I'm moving you into a space to let you know that I love you.
That's good.
So if you're in this room today and you've never heard that in your relationship, I want to let you know it starts there. You want to get marriage? Start with God. You want a great family? Start with God. You want good friendships? Start with God.
That's good.
Start with intentionality. Start with focus and start with getting into community. What does that mean? Be intentional with God. Be focused with God. And get into community with God.
That's good.
God, it all starts with you. You're wondering why there's so many distractions? Listen, some of you care too much about the friendships and relationships that you have around you. And this is for the single person in the room. You're caring too much about the friends that are around you that you need to care more about what's happening to you as an individual. You don't know you enough, and you're going and getting into relationships trying to find your identity with another person.
Yeah.
It don't work that way. Take time to focus on who you are. God, what you put in me? God, what are my gifts and abilities? God, what am I called to? God, what do I do in this life? Because once you figure it out, trust me, there's going to be somebody alongside you that hasn't figured out as well, and they know their identity. You're going to walk into relationship, and you're going to already have some things figured out so that you can be all that God's called you to be.
So good.
And that's so important. Hey, I want you to bow your head and close your eyes right now, and I would love for my wife to just prophetically speak over us right now, and she's going to give us a word. And she's going to give you hope in your relationships because I believe we all need it. So, would you pray for us?
Heavenly Father, I thank you so much, Lord, for every daughter and every son in this room, God. I thank you for every single soul that is underneath the sound of my voice, God, because before they were with the title that they have right now, whether they are a husband, before they were a wife, before they were a son, before they were somebody's daughter, before they were a friend, God, they were already yours, Lord, handpicked, chosen, and made by you with a purpose, God. And I pray, Holy Spirit, that you pour out a fresh anointing upon them, because what I see in my mind are relationships linked together, Lord, that the very sons and daughters in this house, God, would make relationships centered on you, Lord, centered with you, God, and that they would send out people, they would raise up Christ-like leaders, God, and it's those relationships that they have, Lord, that are intentional, that are deep focused, God, that are in community, Lord. It's going to be those people that will carry your name, Jesus, to the four corners of this world, God. And I pray, Father, that their relationships are strong in their marriage, or the marriages inside ACC are stronger than they've ever been before, that their children and the relationships with their parents are stronger than they've ever been before, God. I'm praying that there's strong relationships in their workplace, God, with their bosses and their coworkers. Father, I thank you so much for every single person, Lord, that had eyes to see today, that had ears to hear and hearts to receive your word, Lord. We love